Hey, it's Mark with Saline Lunacy, and welcome to another how-to video as we outfit our Leopard 384. We are in Crown Bay Marina, and this is our current panel configuration. We got one for the hardtop and then two in the back here. So basically what this new setup is going to do, the frame assembly is going to bolt right back in here and then extend these panels aft. So before I rip this all apart, wanted to give you guys a shot of what we started with so you get a good before and after. So what we're going to be doing on this episode is building a cantilever solar arch to hold the additional panel to take us to 4 360s. And we're going to be using a product that we've done one other job on, and it's going to allow us to build a really nice stainless steel assembly with no welding. That's right, no welding. So that drops it down into the DIY realm for just about anybody. So what we're using here is a commercial off-the-shelf hand railing product. It's 316 stainless, which is going to be great for corrosion resistance. And this company, then will, if you stick around to the end of the video, we'll give you the name and the website of the company, but they offer all different types of elbows, tees, feet, bases, all different types of attach points that you would see in commercial handrail installations. And these are basically going to be wet installed, pop riveted in places where you're not going to see it. So from a structural standpoint, it's not going to fall apart. And it's going to give us a really nice assembly without any welding at all. All right, we're back over here for day 2 of the build, although day 1 was really just taking everything out of the box, doing a quick inventory, and also make sure that all the cut lengths were right. So in order to cut some of the labor out of this build, we ordered this kit, if you can see. So we ordered the kit with everything measured exactly like it should be, so we wouldn't have to do any cutting on site. The manufacturer's website only guarantees a tolerance of plus or minus 1/8 of an inch, but everything came in pretty much spot on. So we did a rough assembly yesterday of everything, and then also what we did was take the time to label all of the components. So as you can see here, AAA, basically those two joints are going to go together right there into that elbow. So we basically have letters across the top, A through D, and then across the bottom we are doing numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And what that's going to do is that's going to eliminate any opportunity for confusion. So now that everything's properly identified, we can totally break this down like it is now. We're going to take everything over to the drill press and drill on the drill press today. You can certainly drill this all by hand, but it is a lot more work than if you have a drill press. So by doing all the layout and all the ID, we can take it to the drill press. We'll have this all drilled up in about a little over an hour. And then we're going to start to do the wet install bond and assembly today. So it's going to start coming together. So one little tip that we learned whenever we built the first arch out of this material is that the corner pieces have a slightly different geometry, and they're actually from a different manufacturer than the tees. So what that means is the piece that goes on the elbow needs to be about 3/16 shorter, if you can see from this angle. So this is about 3/16 shorter than this leg in order to get the outside dimension of the assembly flush. That is not 3/16 on both ends, that's 3/16 overall. So the geometry for the elbow of this is probably about 3/32 difference, but we find that if we order the outside perimeter, basically anything that touches an elbow needs to be 3/16 shorter. All of the cuts that the company did were spot on, so we were able to order all of this exactly to length to fit the solar panel. And on the solar panel we went 1 inch longer, so we're basically going to have a 1/2 inch spacer on all 4 sides of the solar panel, and it will allow us just to bolt everything together and run with it. It's important to get the height on this, the height of your shim, which is going to be holding the long end of the stock, even with the deck of the drill press. And also, the other thing you want to do is this is going to change relative to the length of bit you were using. If I was using a shorter drill bit here, I would raise this and I would elevate the shim stock just to basically reduce the amount of throw that you have on the drill press at all times. All right, so that's got all of the elbows. Basically everything around the perimeter is drilled. What we're going to have to do now is change the setup a little bit. And the reason being is at the tees, these are actually going to be through bolted. So we're going to change the setup on the drill press a little bit to allow for basically change the height so I can drill all the way through that in one shot. And the inside edge of any tee is going to be through bolted. The outside edge of the tee is going to be pop riveted. The first one of these I did, this amount of movement at this stage of the game really scared the hell out of me. I thought that there was no way we would be able to get a rigid enough assembly to mount on a boat without a lot of additional support. You'll see here in a second, once this is wet installed with JB Weld or Ledo Weld, you'll see that it winds up being a pretty stiff assembly. And the other cool thing about this is because you have some play at this stage of the game, what we're actually going to be able to do is mold this, for lack of a better word, to the shape of the hardtop. So we've measured and we've got about 3/4 of an inch from where the center panel is going to rest down to where the outer panel is. So the middle assembly on this is going to wind up with a 3/6 inch shim when we do the wet install on this, and then when it cures, it's already going to have that pre-bent arc. Well, technically it's not going to be an arc, it's going to be segmented, but long story short is it will fit the hardtop much better than if it was just a flat assembly. I'm sure most vessels out there, most hardtops out there are going to have a similar contour. So that way it's going to help a little bit with runoff, it's going to help a little bit with windage just because it's going to be a little bit better shape, and aesthetically it's going to match the lines of the boat better. And at this stage of the game, we basically are going to go in here and clean up all the edges. I tried this a couple of different ways on the last time. One where I masked both sides really close and then left the cleanup till afterwards. Don't go that route, it was a big pain. So you'll want to do your cleanup as you go. Alright, so that was the first leg, which is the forward side of the arch. Now what we got to do is repeat on this step. We're going to set it right here on the other side of the wall to dry, basically using the same shims. Alright, so once the assembly's in this stage, you've got quite a bit of time in order to get it straight and make sure everything's aligned just like you want it. In order to work around the masking that I left on, basically this assembly can only bend at 2 points. So I constructed a string line there that, as you can see, this block of wood just barely fits into. So I'm going to come down here at each spot, at each joint, and as long as I am in the ballpark, I know that I am good to go. And the assembly is straight. I'm actually going to tweak this out just a hair, just to get that a little tighter. And as long as you're within a string thickness, should be good. So that is the 2 forward and aft sides. Wet installed, pop riveted. And tomorrow we'll come in and frame up the big assembly, the whole assembly. So that was basically about 2 hours to drill up and wet install all the fasteners. All right, moment of truth here. If you remember yesterday, we had these set up over here. I could lift this end, and basically this would come up about 5 or 6 inches before the other end would come all the way off the ground. And I want you to notice, once the wet install is done, exactly how stiff that is, right? That's almost as stiff as if that was one piece. We basically have every joint is pop riveted. Those are basically going to serve as, for lack of a better word, a chicken rivet. The assembly probably would never come apart just being bonded together, but certainly between bonding it with the JB Weld or the Lido Weld and putting a pop rivet in each joint, this thing is never coming apart, and it's going to be super rigid, more than rigid, for what we need for this install. And if it was to have any flex in it, we could always put some legs or some stanchions coming off of the sugar scoops. But I think for this install, we are not going to have to do that. So, more to come. So at this stage of the game, yesterday we took the time to drill out every joint or fitting on the drill press. So today what we're going to do is unmask most of this. I'm still going to leave the corners and some other areas masked. We're going to go buy some hardware, and we're going to actually bolt this thing together and start fitting solar panels. It's coming together that quickly. All right, so we've got the frame fully assembled. So again, on the corner joints, we just did a pop rivet. This is the piece that is the cross member that's put on. The T's in the middle are actually through bolted with 3/16 bolts. And on this step, we didn't do a wet install on these fittings. And here's why. One, it's another whole day of cure time and cycle time. If you take the frame, I don't know if you can see it, but if I move it back and forth, it has a tiny amount of play in it. But as soon as the solar panels are inserted into these sections and torqued down, all of that little bit of lateral play is going to totally go away. So what we're going to do now is, so this panel is the new panel that we're putting on the boat. The other 2 panels are on the boat. So I'm going to make a storyboard, which is basically a template that I can insert into the panel, drill through the frame in the same spot. Probably not going to use that hole that was in a slightly bad spot on the last setup that we did. I'm going to go center it a little bit more and come in a little bit. We will drill 4 locations on the panel, insert that into the frame, and then drill into the frame. And I'm going to do that in all 3 spots, so this is basically ready to accept the other panels. The solar panels all being from the same lot, the tolerances on them are super close, so we're not going to have any problems with fit. Knock on wood. If we use the storyboard, drill everything square and flush, once we get the other panels off, use the storyboard to drill them, they will bolt right in place. So to hold the panels in place in the middle, we are going to be basically just through bolting them, similar to how we did the T here. On the outside of the frame, because I don't want to through bolt, I don't want to see the hardware on the outside and just have another place for metal to metal corrosion and salt water to gather and stuff like that. We're going to be using riv nuts. So a riv nut is a It's a swelling fastener that basically is going to install threads into that channel, and I'll give you a little bit more detail when I go to squeeze those in place. All right, so the frame is assembled. The center solar panel is installed, although these are a little bit loose because we're through bolting the inner panel to the outer panel. Those are a little bit loose, and we'll tighten those up when we get the other panels in. I mentioned earlier rib nuts. On the outside two locations, as you can see, that's where the outer solar panels are going to mount on the outside of the frame. You could through bolt those, but then you're going to have hardware on the outside as mentioned earlier, and we talked about rib nuts. So I'm going to install rib nuts in those 4 locations, and this is kind of a shot of what a rib nut looks like installed. It is similar to a rivet, except for the fact that if you can see in there, it actually installs a threaded insert. So that's going to allow us just to simply put a lock washer and a bolt and bolt that outer panel directly into the frame. All right, so that basically is all we're going to try to knock out today. We got the center panel mounted. We have all the hardware installed for the outer panels, so now it is time to bring the boat into the marina. The last one of these that we moved was a 4-panel assembly. We had 5 guys and a couple of helpers, and it was a beast to move. So tomorrow when we put this on the boat, it's probably just going to be little old me and maybe one other guy. So what I'm going to do today is build a skateboard so we can lift it by one end, drag the thing to the boat without doing any damage, lift the thing up there with a halyard, drill a bunch of holes, bolt it down, take the old panels out, put the new panels in here, and plug it in, and voila, we're going to have more power. All right, so remember from the other day, the good old storyboard. That's right. We have both of the solar panels off of the boat, and now we are going to drill these up using the storyboard, walk them over to the frame, bolt them in place, and then it's showtime. It'll be ready to put that bad boy on the boat. There she is. Panels all both bolted in. Just got to remove some last minute masking, wipe her down, put some colonite on her, and drill some holes and install. Also, because it's not a welded assembly, it's not 100% sealed everywhere, so we did drill drainage holes in every tube, just a number 30 hole. So yesterday was all about getting this thing temp installed. So we've got it held up with the topping lift right now. We basically used the topping lift and those 2x4s, built a ramp and ramped it up into place. We didn't cover a whole lot about where the mounting holes and stuff are going to go, because that's really going to be pretty unique to your arch design and to the boat that you're installing it on. And then a lot of boats that we're seeing these on will also have some vertical legs from the down onto the sugar scoop, but in this install we're not going to need them. All right, so the arch is up and it is performing very well. We We just did a pretty rough 4-day passage from St. Thomas to Carriacou, and this thing is rock solid. So definitely still love the product. It is performing very well. The only negative that I have to say about it is because it is a brushed 316 stainless instead of polished, you do get some what they call tea staining, as you can see here, which is going to wind up being some additional maintenance that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to, I'm about to colonite this whole thing. And I'm also experimenting with different products that I can use on it to mitigate that. As you can see over here, one of the tests that I have going on, this was colonized before the passage. This side right here I wiped down with 6-56. It's a CRC product. Out here I did not. So obviously you can see a significant improvement in the tea staining. But even then, I'm still in some areas starting to see a little bit of tea staining. So if you were going to build with this product, I would highly recommend that you go ahead and before you do the install, you just polish this thing 100%. On the last build out we did, we had a couple of weld assemblies that we had to do, and the welders that did the project on that assured us that it is a very high quality stainless. It's good stainless. And if you read the literature on this, it's really just the surface finish that is causing that additional problem. So if you buff this out, it's going to perform as good or better than your standard polished stainless will on the rest of your vessel. So overall, I would say thumbs up for the Bi-Railings product. We really do like it, and it gives you a lot of versatility in building without having to do welding. We really hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you are subscribed. If you are not, please do so, and feel free to send any questions or comments you have on the build. And also get over to www.birailings.com to get your order placed so you can build your solar arch. A special thanks goes out to Jesse on SV Smitty for helping with the install. And if you're in the St. Thomas area and you are looking for power upgrades for your vessel, find STT Marine Services. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or at sttmarineservices.com.